This is Blackjacked, a podcast about how the civil rights movement went left.
Oh man, I gotta get up. I gotta go. Ooh. I gotta go. I gotta go. I gotta go. I gotta get up and go. I gotta go. I gotta go. I gotta get up and go. I gotta get up and leave.
Welcome back to the Blackjack Podcast. What if I told you that the civil rights movement did way more to benefit white business than black business? The civil rights movement, for all of its gains, one real flaw is that in the final analysis, white people won. Like, white people's businesses got a complete access to a black customer base. Black business, which tragically did so much to fund and propel the civil rights movement, did not benefit from it. From the very beginning, the civil rights movement could not have operated, could not have done anything without the assistance of black entrepreneurs. And that was from the very beginning. So, for example, people often think of the Emmett Till case as sort of being the launch of the movement, when black people just said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. This is in 1954. Of course, we know the story. Emmett Till from Chicago comes down to Money, Mississippi, and he gets lynched. And so there's a trial, and Emmett Till's mother, Mamie Till, she comes down from Chicago, and the black press is interested in this. This becomes a real thing. But the only way that this works for the Till family, the only way that this works for black journalists, and by the way, we would know nothing without the black press. White people certainly did not cover this trial. But the only reason why any of this is possible is because of an all-black town, Mound Bayou, Mississippi. It was a town founded by formerly enslaved people in 1887. This is a place where black people could just sort of operate and be free, independent of everyone else. And so you have a vibrant black business scene. And the guy is a Dr. T.R.M. Howard. He's a physician. He's an entrepreneur. He's got a bunch of different businesses. He has an insurance company. He's got all kind of stuff. He really works with Medgar Evers from the NAACP and other people to provide security for the Till family, to give a safe haven for the black press. None of this happens without the black business community. As you move forward in the movement, you have people like John Johnson. Most folks remember at least Ebony Magazine, Jet Magazine, Johnson Publishing Company. So this is John Johnson. John Johnson was one of the primary people who worked with Dr. King to raise money. He's raising money for Dr. King. Dr. King is also getting assistance from Atlanta Life Insurance. In fact, you go back to 1960, you have the student movement in Atlanta. These students get involved. The guy who's the head of Atlanta Life Insurance at that time, Alonzo Herndon was the founder. He was formerly enslaved. He starts as a barber, and then he gets these barbershops together. He gets a couple different barbershops, gets into real estate, and eventually into insurance. He hands the company off to his son, Norris Herndon, who, by the way, was closeted gay back then. He was a very private, reclusive guy, didn't talk to anybody. His own employees probably wouldn't know who he was if he walked into the office, like for real. But the company has $1 million in assets, and Norris Herndon blows this thing out. It grows until it has like a presence in 17 different states. And ultimately, by the time it's said and done, Norris Herndon's personal fortune is estimated to be something around $100 million. Now, again, his father handed the company to him with $1 million in assets, and he blows it out. So Atlanta Life Insurance is a huge deal. But the point I was getting at with the student movement in Atlanta, students show up to the first protest. They've got like these raggedy signs, and Norris Herndon sees this or hears about this, and he calls the students in to the office. He's like, we got to get some better signage, man. So these companies are very invested in the movement. You don't have a movement without these companies. You don't have a movement. Civil rights leaders depended on these people to raise money from. They depended on them for resources, but in the end, did very little to reciprocate that. In many ways, the civil rights movement is consumed with what we don't have versus what we do have. And because there's not a focus on what we do have, we don't build upon that. It's just we don't have access to this. We don't have access to that. We don't have the freedom to do this. We don't have the freedom to do that. But what do we have, and how can we build upon that? And certainly, if these companies are beneficial to you, we ought to do something to reach back to them. And we don't see that focus. But there were things to build upon. Just take a wild guess. What were the largest black businesses in the history of America? In the history of this country, what would you guess were the largest and most profitable black-owned businesses? The answer is life insurance companies, believe it or not. Most black businesses, and this is even true today, never really reached industry scale. I mean, these are just kind of small mom and pop operations. sole proprietorships, or just really small shops. The companies that really reach that real big league scale are insurance companies. Now, there are other exceptions like, the Johnson Publishing Company, some of that, but for the most part, those are it. And there's a scholar out of Wichita State University, Dr. Robert Weems. He really kind of studies this, and he really comes up with the point that there's a real corollary between the decline of black neighborhoods and black insurance companies. Why? Black insurance companies were the biggest investors in black neighborhoods. These are the companies that provide capital for business loans and home loans. Like, this is where the money is. There was a time in this country where we had 46 black insurance companies. And collectively, they had over $1 trillion, trending close to $2 trillion in insurance policies in force. So if you go back to 1925, the top 8 black insurance companies had $141 million in policies. That's over $2 billion in today's money. By the time you get to 1973, one company alone, Atlanta Life Insurance, which I just mentioned, they had $346 million in policies. That's in 1973. But the movement is consumed with what we don't have and not building on what we do have. Those companies really, they had something, and that's a foundation we could build upon because, again, they're investing in black business. They're investing in black neighborhoods. Maybe there was an opportunity to look at how do we build those up even more and how do we protect them and provide for their growth. And so by insisting on integration, obviously we are growing white business because we're diverting a lot of customers to them. And in fact, the black insurance sector, one of the things that happens is as integration comes along, they see an opportunity, white businesses see an opportunity to grow their black customer base. And so they take the best and the most talented black insurance salespersons. They pursue black customers. They bring them into these white companies. And yes, many black customers thought it was a flex to get a policy from a white company, and they did. And so that is a weakness. That is a real flaw. But the other thing that you see here, we're advocating for jobs. We're advocating for the government to do all these things to help black people through the white system. But there's no policy advocacy to help black companies. And ultimately, that leads to the decline of black business. There's a pretty good article. There's a publication called The Washington Monthly. I actually know the editor, guy by the name of Paul Glasser, really good guy. But some years ago, they came up with a piece about the decline of black business. You can just Google the decline of black business in Washington Monthly and find it. But it talks about, yes, we know that integration had its effects and that, but the big killer for black business was that the government really gave up on enforcing anti-monopoly, antitrust regulations. So we're just going to get out of that business. Everybody can get bigger, 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 bigger. We can get monopoly. We can do whatever we want. And guess who gets crushed? Black businesses. Now, to be fair, a lot of white people get crushed too. But when you only have a few businesses, like, you're going to crush everything. So by the time you get to the 1990s, Black Enterprise says that era was a virtual bloodbath for the black insurance sector. Because again, if everyone can get bigger, they just crush you or they just buy you out. You don't have a chance to compete. And so there's no foresight. There's no policy advocacy to say, okay, we've got to protect what we have and help that grow. And so maybe we should be focusing on, we need strong antitrust. We need a strong anti-monopoly stance from the government. And so when we have opportunities to use the black vote, we should flex it in these ways to protect our interests so we can foster that and help that grow. But again, if you look at all the advocacy, all the public policies that we're pushing, these things benefit white businesses, not black business. And that was a problem. When we look back, the people who get most of the credit for raising money, it's the Harry Belafontes, a lot of white liberals, white businessmen. We don't talk about these black entrepreneurs. In any campaign, I don't care. Let's say you're an entrepreneur and you want to build a company. Who do you ask for money first? You ask your friends and your family. You go to people closest to you. And so it was with the movement. Before you have Northern bankers kicking in, you have black businessmen. You have these black insurance companies. Absolutely. But we only talk about black entertainers and white liberals. The foundation was the black business community. We don't talk about it, and we didn't do anything to foster their growth. Everything we did, well, I won't say everything, a great deal of what we did was to benefit white business. Now, to be fair, Dr. King, for example, again, because he's just so prominent in the movement, it's not to pick on him, but he's just a very prominent figure. At the very end of his life, he seems to be singing this tune. If you go back to April 3rd, 1968, that's the night before he's killed. He's at Mason Temple in Memphis and he gives a speech, the whole I've been to the mountaintop speech. But if you listen to that speech in its entirety, he does talk about the need to strengthen black institutions. So he tells his people, in addition to boycotting white companies, we got to build up black companies. He tells the crowd, put your money in the black bank, Tri-State Bank in Memphis. He says, we got some black insurance companies in Memphis. Take your insurance there. So rather than having a sit-in where, you go sit at the lunch counter and try to force them to integrate, he says, no, instead of a sit-in, let's have a bank in. Let's have an insurance in. And that's great. The problem is it's too little too late. This is what the movement should have been doing from the very beginning. And yes, a lot of black organizations did some of this, but that wasn't the message. That's not that's not what was being proclaimed publicly and loudly. This is what we should have been emphasizing. From the time Emmett Till was murdered and to the very end of the movement, that should have been the thrust. We've got to encourage what we have. We've got to foster what we have. We have to develop what we have and not just look at what we don't have. And we've got to protect it. So our policy advocacy needs to look into the future and say, how do we protect these businesses and how do we foster their growth? I think this conversation is an important one. And I want to pick up on this next week on Black Tech. We're going to keep talking about how the civil rights movement went left.
I gotta go. I gotta go. I gotta get up and go. I gotta get up and leave. I gotta get up and go. I gotta go. I gotta get up and go. They waiting on me when I walk out the door. They counting on me to get ready to blow. Too many people saying that I'm the hero. Too many people looking up to me. Can't let them down, not an option for me. Don't even matter if you rocking with me. I touch down even if you ain't blocking for me. No BS and no negativity. Only dealing with positive energy. Yeah, it's haters and doubters surrounding me. I don't pay them no man, they ain't stopping me. Like Brady and Jordan, no topping me. I'm MVP in every category. My confidence grows every day that I rise. Gotta get up and go, keep my eye on the prize. I gotta go, manifesting on my hopes and dreams. I gotta go, yo, I'm strategizing like I'm coaching the team. I got places to go, I got people to see, I got things to do. Yo, I'm through with surviving, it's time to start living, I don't know about you. That's what I see for myself, speak over my life, I got riches and wealth. Take it in stride one day at a time, no malice inside, I'm nothing but blessed. I gotta go, ooh.